Hi, everybody. This is Randy with Drag Racing's Golden Era. We're glad that you're here. We're going to do something a little bit different today, something I've never done before. We're going to do a book report, a book review, actually. The book is Northern California Drag Racing, and it's put out by Arcadia Press. And this book was put together by Steve Reyes, the legendary photographer, who's going to be joining us here in just a second. And I got to tell you, this book, as soon as I got it, I couldn't put it down. I read it cover to cover. The first time I just sat at the kitchen table reading it. And there are so many facts in this book that I never knew, and names that pop up that I never knew were part of the NorCal scene. So we're going to have Steve Reyes join us here, the author of this book. And he's going to talk a little bit about the book, about the NorCal scene, and about everything you ever wanted to know about it. So, hi, Steve.
How you doing?
We're glad that you're here. Back again. We did an interview series with you a while back, not too long ago, but I got to tell you, I appreciate this book being sent to me because it is just an amazing piece of history. Absolutely amazing.
Well, you're one of the people that I figured would appreciate it, being the motorhead that you are, and I appreciate anything being here to be able to promote it a little bit and explain a few things and little secrets and things like that. But it was a fun thing to work on. It really was.
Is this a solo project, or did you have help with this?
I used, I believe, two photos that a late friend of mine had shot. Mike Bagnot. He photographed at Fremont for a few years after I left there, and he had a couple of really cool images. And another friend of mine had inherited Mike's negatives, and now Mike was kind of my, I guess, a protege, you'd say. I mean, I tried to teach him everything, and he was very enthusiastic. But he had a couple of really nice images that I felt should be in that book. And Jamie Jackson, who, like I said, owns Mike's stuff, no problem. He's go for it. And so I have two images in there. The rest are mine.
Cool.
So.
Well, the book starts out in the introduction here, and it's one of these pieces of history that I've always found fascinating, is that right after World War II ended, you had an entire generation of young men who were GIs coming back from the war, who essentially hadn't even been able to live life as an adult yet. They went straight from high school to the war, coming back, and they need something to do. They're wound up and they're ready to raring to go for life, and they need something to do. And I mean, drag racing really was born out of that, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, the adrenaline there, was nonstop. Obviously, you come back from the trenches or the jungles or wherever you were fighting, flying a P-38 or bombers or whatever. You come back and all of a sudden it's like, there's no real excitement in your life, and most of these guys were really obviously into cars, and so they they started racing on the street, which the townsfolk and the mayors and whatever certain towns did not appreciate them racing. At least in Northern California, there wasn't like the dry lakes like you'd have in Southern California, where those guys could blow off some steam running down the dry lakes. Well, these guys were street racing, and basically it came down to they formed car clubs, and then they met with mayors and certain officials of towns and said, hey, we need a place to race. We understand you don't want us racing on the street. We understand that, but we've got to, this is what we love doing, and we need a place to do it. And most of the mayors and higher ups in the city said, okay, well, we'll check it out. And fortunately, in Northern California, there was a lot of airstrips that had been either abandoned or were rarely being used. And it came down to, okay, you guys want to race, Salinas, or you want to race at Lodi, some of these places that were just abandoned airstrips. And hey, we'll fix them up. We'll do this, we'll do that. And that's how the whole ball got rolling in Northern California. Was these guys took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and they went for it. It was none of this, we're going to sneak around and race on this street, in the midnight or whatever, like they had been doing. But instead, they made friends with the police, chief of police and mayors and things like that, and it basically snowballed into something that worked out for both parties, which was very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
You spend one of the things I noticed in here, especially early on in this book, is that you spend a lot of time talking about the Salinas drag strip, which was actually an airfield up there. And there's one picture in here in particular that shows the airfield tower in the background. It's a picture of Legion Field.
Was that John Blount? It was the Wind's Coupe, kind of a 3/4 rear. Yeah. It shows that. Well, that was that view you see. That's the actual airport over to it would be the left with the tower and everything. And the strip that they're racing on is like an auxiliary airstrip. And the Salinas racers, the whole group in that area made a deal I think it was 1948, 49, right in there. And the city said, okay, well, you can use this and you got to do this, you got to do that, as far as blocking it off so no errant cars end up on the airport or whatever. And it worked for from 1940 49 or 50 to 1970, I think, is when they basically that whole deal ended. But it kept a lot of racers off the street racers off the street and onto the drag strip. And I mean, the place was obviously an airport. It wasn't built to race cars on. You can see by some of the photos, the one side of the track, there is no spectator area. It's cows. It's a barbed wire fence with cows, and those were the spectators. Okay. And, they did have grandstands, which were kind of wood and rickety, but they did have that. They had a pit. They had no return road. All the cars accumulated at the end of the track. And then when it got too crowded down there, it wasn't right at the end, obviously. It was more over to the left where they had a holding area. They would stop their races and bring everybody up the track to go into their pit area and service their vehicles. I mean, you did not want to go off the end of Salinas because the whole thing was 55-gallon drums full of sand, and they would stop you. There was you made sure your parachute worked, your brakes worked there, because you did not want to go off the end, because they made sure that you did not get onto the active airstrip. They made sure of that. So,
well, I'm looking for the user that are watching this. I'm looking down. I have my reading glasses on because obviously I'm old now and can't see.
The feeling.
Some of the back then it used to be, for those of you who don't know this, it used to be speed shops used to compete against each other, putting a top fuel dragster together, a top gas dragster, whatever they could put together, and it'd be speed shop against speed shop. But I'm seeing some names in here that I hadn't ever heard of, like Goody's Speed Shop, Jack Sterling Automotive, racing against each other. Champion Speed Shops was up there in that area too, right? Don Smith.
Yeah, that Champion was in South San Francisco, and they sponsored a twin engine top gas car. They had a front motored blown Chevy car that Sammy Hale drove. They also had a couple of roadsters, things like that lower class cars that would go compete, when they didn't have a top fuel show, say at Half Moon Bay or at Fremont or whatever, then they would still have some sort of rolling advertisement, as you say. But Goody's Speed Shop, they were the powerhouse. Them and Vic Hubbard's Speed and Marine, those two were the powerhouse speed shops. Like you said, that went head to head. They would go head to head in top fuel. They would go head to head top gas on down the classes, because that's just the way. Richard Guess, who owned Goody's, he was a true motorhead guy. I mean, he sponsored the first I guess you'd say four funny cars in the area that made a name for themselves. Some guy named let's see, what's his name? Lieberman, Jim Lieberman. That was that was an employee. Lieberman worked. He was just the guy that worked at Goody Speed Shop, and Lou Arrington gave him a ride in the Brutus funny car, and the rest is history, so to speak. But you're right though. The speed shops were boy, they'd go at each other's throats. There was no love lost between those guys. And the Gotelli speed shop in San Francisco they were in the mix in Top Fuel. They were feared. And then you had Bing's speed shop up in Santa Rosa, John Batto, who ran a Top Fuel dragster. But I mean, that was like hate between Gotelli and Bing's, and it was just like there was no love lost between a lot of those guys, but it was fun. I mean, there wasn't a bad hate. It was just like, hey, the rivalry was back and forth, and it was fun to watch. I'll say like a guy like Denny Milani, who would get mad at Ted Gotelli, so he would leave Ted Gotelli's car, and you'd find him in Masters and Richter's car the next week, which was where they were like rivals. But the same guy would drive both cars in opposite weekends. That's the way it was around there. It was no, Gotelli would have Sammy Hale, or he'd bring in Jerry Card, or he'd have who else did he have? I lose track of some of the drivers of these. They drive for 1 or 2 weekends, then you don't see them for 3-4 months, whatever. But that's just the way it was then. Back then, it was fun.
Don Smith, by the way, Champion Speed Shops. I had the great honor of sitting at his table this year. I was invited by him and John Toll to sit at the table. He got inducted in the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame under the Founders Award. So a great honor for him. And I'm looking forward to actually talking to him in the future. So Sunnyvale, Gene Laughlin raced one of the first funny cars up there at Salinas again. In 67, and I'm looking at this thing, and it looks like AFX, pre-funny car, but AFX.
Yeah,
neat looking stuff. I mean, what funny cars weren't big on the scene yet at that point, were they? Or the AFX?
Well, in Northern California, most of the promoters around there really, their attitude towards funny cars were, it's just a fad. It just, because what happened was Dick Landy came up and ran in I believe it was 65, late 65. And his act was he'd come up and he had a bunch of weight in the trunk and he'd do wheelies down the track. That was his version of a funny car at the time, or their version, Mopar or whatever. And he was booked into Don Smith's place, the Half Moon Bay, right? And I'd say they advertised it pretty good. And I was there, and all the spectators came in one bus, I think, or maybe one car. I shot photos of the spectator grandstands, and there was one person sitting. And the rest of the people, like I said, they all came in one bus, I think, or train car or whatever. It wasn't, I'll put it this way, it was very underwhelming, the whole funny car experience at Half Moon Bay. So Half Moon Bay, they didn't book any funny cars for a funny car show, I think, until late 68. But Fremont was one of those places that was hardcore Top Fuel roadsters. And I think when Ron Miller took over, Ron Miller and Steve Gibbs, that's when you started to see some funny cars coming into the place. But the first funny cars I remember running at Fremont were in 1966, and it was Hubert Platt with a long nose injected Mustang racing Dickie Harrell. Okay, that was the match race, but they weren't the headliners for that particular weekend. The headliners for the weekend were Stonewas and Cook versus John Masmanian. Those were the headline And and it was one of those, oh, and by the way, there's going to be a couple of funny cars here. What happened was Masmanian's car broke a transmission on the first run, and Stonewalls and Cook went up there and just did a couple of singles to win the match. Well, that kind of opened the door for the funny cars, because Harrell and Platt, they put on quite a show, carrying the wheels and side by side. And to be honest, I don't remember who won the match race, but a lot of people took interest. They said, oh, these guys are pretty cool. And before that, the promoters in Northern California just thought, funny cars were just a fad. I mean, like I said, they had Landy up there, doing, 25-mile-an-hour wheelies or whatever he was doing. And there was another car that showed up with Mark Danikas driving. It was a Mopar, and it was called Drag Racing Hawaiian Style or something like that. It was and that's what he did. He just went out there and did wheelies, turned around, come back, did wheelies. That was the extent of the funny car show there for quite a while. And then you started to get a few, kind of, shall we say, strange looking, a couple of, like, I think one Valiant showed up with a motor in the front seat. And they had a few strange cars show up, and then I never saw them again. And a Mustang called the Challenger show up. It had spoked dragster front wheels on it. I saw it run once and it was gone. But yeah, there was some, shall we say, rather strange funny cars that did show up. And then when Goodies got involved, when Guest got involved, Lieberman built his first Nova. And December 3rd, 1966, they had a match race madness at Fremont. It was Lieberman versus Gas Ronda, his injected long nose. And that people sat up because Lieberman was a hero in that area. And he put some people in the stands. And it was, from then on, it was, they could bring in, say, okay, they had, like Brutus would come in and match race Nicholson. The Nicholson Eliminator won. Okay, they did a little deal there, and Lieberman Lieberman was driving for Arrington. He got his butt kicked, but Lieberman went out there and did a burnout with the front wheels about 10 feet in the air. The people just went berserk. Serious, he did a dry hop after doing a burnout. He did a dry hop, and the thing hooked, and he was on the back bumper with the rear wheels off the ground. I mean, people were just, they didn't care who won they figured he had already won their hearts. I mean, he was just insane in that car. But that was, then you had the Harry Canary, those guys, spinning out every other run, and you had to,
Well, now that you say it, I misspoke. I said I'd never heard the name Goodies, Speed Shop before, but you're right. That name was on the side of Jim Lieberman's cars, Goodies. I'd completely forgotten about that. As far as fuel goes up there, I came across a picture in here, and this is of Carl Olson driving the Hooligan. I mean, he talked about it in his interview, but this is a great picture, side-by-side racing here, and it talks about how he used to try and read the flag starters back then, and great stuff up here. I know you had a relationship with Carl Olson, but great piece of history here too. And injected, because in Southern California, they were called junior fuel. What is, hold on.
Junior fuelers.
Yeah. But actually a fuel dragster, right? Injected.
Yeah. A fuel, B fuel, depending obviously on the size of the cubic inches of the motor.
Ace Bradford. There's a picture in here of Ace Bradford with a bantam bodied altered, but I mean, this is not your typical bantam body altered 68 with a roof on it and stuff.
Now it's the same body style. Gabby Bleeker had his fuel altered, his AA fuel altered in running out of Chicago. That thing was an animal. Oof.
Now that you say that, for whatever reason, I think I saw that car that you're talking about out of Chicago. I don't know if it was just there as a piece of show or if it actually ran, but I think I saw that car at Great Lakes Dragaway at one point. I don't think it was running though.
No, it could have been. The last time I saw that car was sitting on a trailer in somebody's backyard in a Chicago suburb. It was just sitting there. It wasn't even covered. It was just sitting out in the elements. And I know a couple of people went by there and they wanted to buy it. And whoever owned it at the time, he wasn't interested. He was just going to let it sit there and rot on a trailer. But it was Gabby Bleeker's his Bantam. So I don't know. Maybe somebody finally convinced this would have been in the 80s. Yeah, probably would have been in the mid 80s that I saw it sitting on this trailer, and somebody could have purchased it, talked the guy into buying it from him, and then restored it and maybe brought it to Great Lakes. That could be. I'm not sure. Or somebody built a retro of the car, but that car was cool.
Yeah.
I saw it run at Pomona in 71 or 72. That thing hauled. I mean, it was cool.
Well, you told me when we did an interview, you hung around with the Chevy Too Heavy group.
Oh yeah.
And you've got a picture of them in here. Looks like AFX days. Or was this a true funny car at this point? 67.
Yeah, it was a true funny car. The Chevy Too Heavy was the Blair Speed Shop Steve Bovan car. Was one of the original funny cars, to be honest. I mean, Bovan was one of the first guys to pack up his undies and head east. He was racing anywhere and everywhere, and he'd do these big long smoky burnouts. And I mean, the car would run in the 10s, maybe high 9s, but it was the burnouts and the wheels up launches that he got the people going. I mean, he wouldn't care who he raced. He raced at Fremont. He showed up and he raced Tommy Grove, and Grove still was in the Charlie Horse AFX Mustang, and they did a 2 out of 3, and Bovan got his butt kicked, but it didn't matter. The people loved Chevy versus Ford, and the blower versus carbureted, the AFX car, and it was. He was Bovan had it going for when he first started running that car, and then Carter and Little bought the car and turned it into Chevy Too Heavy.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to keep moving forward here because there's just so much ground to cover. I came across a picture of the glass slipper. Now that car I'd heard of, I've seen pictures of. I think Bob Morabas told me he raced him one time in a match race up there. But I came across the Dolphin dragster that was built in 1954, and this car was restored. It looks like at some point. What a unique piece of equipment that is.
Well, I met the gentleman that owned and restored the car, and he was a character. He would just, I met him at a car show in Sacramento. I was there photographing a car show for Popular Hot Rodding, and he had the car on display, and we got to talking, and I asked him if I could shoot some photos of it. And it wasn't so much I wanted to shoot it for a magazine or anything. I just thought it was really cool that he had taken the time and restored the car to the way he ran the car initially when he first built it. I mean, unfortunately, he had to park the car because his business got too good, and it was one of those things. A lot of those guys in Northern California, they worked for a living. It wasn't one of those deals where they could just let's go race at Bristol this weekend, or let's go race in Texas this weekend. These guys, they had jobs, families, et cetera, and there wasn't a lot of them that say, hey, let's go race in New York, let's go race in Chicago. So no, it's just the way it was.
It's a beautiful car.
Oh yeah.
People buy here. Again, there's so many reasons to buy this book, but there's pictures in here that are just awesome. I've never seen any of this stuff before. Here's another one, 1964. And I love the name of this car, Terrible Tempered, Ted Gotelli's top fuel dragster. What a great name for a car, Terrible Tempered.
Yeah, that was Gotelli. He was you didn't want to cross old Ted. I mean, he's kind of a crazy Italian, Northern California Italian. He wouldn't mix words. I mean, him and his driver Denny Milani always arguing. So
Well, I see you've got three different drivers actually listed for Denny Milani, Pete Ogden, and Slammin' Sammy, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Pete Ogden, he worked with Kent Fuller for a while, and then he branched out on his own. And Ogden was a good guy. I like Pete. He was very attentive to detail, things like that, and plus he drove the things. I mean, he didn't just sit back and let somebody else, crash dummy the cars. He went out there. Yeah, that's one reason why he retired. He crashed one at Bakersfield in '66, and said, "No, I don't think I want to do this anymore." So,
Oh,
but
well,
he knew how to build a car. He built pure hell.
oh, he did.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, he built the car that's right behind me. He built that the chassis and everything for Guasco. Oh yeah.
Well, and there's something I saw in the book here that you know is a lost piece of history. Everybody remembers Rich Guasco in Pure Hell, but how about Pure Hell, the funny car?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't he crash that thing? He burned it
Well,
up or something, didn't he?
yeah. Elwin Honker Carlson was Guasco's first funny car driver, and unfortunately, the first or second week they brought the car out, they burned it to the ground. And Rich is the kind of guy. It's like, yeah, one of these kind of guys. If you shot him, he'd get up and say, "Yeah, okay, whatever." He's a hard guy to knock down and to stay down. I mean, he's one of those guys that, nah, I'll get up and do it again. And he did. He built the car again from the ground up, and then Dave Beebe drove for him, and they won. 73, they went to Columbus and won the Spring Nationals with the Soapy Sales body on the Pure Hell car. And not that many people know that was a Pure Hell car that won and won that NHRA event. That's the only NHRA event that Guasco ever won with. He was in partners with Larry Huff at the time, and Huff needed a car to put his Soapy Sales body on. And that's they took the car to Columbus, which was really surprising because Dave Beebe never wanted to leave California. He had a really good job. He did not want to leave his family. And that's why you never saw Dave Beebe on tour anywhere. If he went anywhere, it had to be fly there and turn around and fly back home. The only other time I ever remember him leaving was when he drove the Beebe Brothers and sixth top fuel car. He drove it at, I believe it was Tulsa. But he was a family guy. He wanted to spend time with his family. He had a really good job, and he just felt that the drag racing was a hobby for him. He loved it. I mean, the guy drove a fuel altered. He drove top fuel, and he drove about 4 or 5 different funny cars. But if somebody said, "Hey, Dave, let's go on tour," nope. He stayed home. He stayed close to home. He was a good guy too. Very good guy.
Okay, so I'm going to hold this up. I came across this picture right here. Frank
Okay.
Bradley. He's like mean mugging the picture here. I didn't even recognize him as Frank Bradley.
Oh, the three Caballeros. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Another thing I did not know that I thought Frank Bradley was a SoCal guy. I didn't know he was a NorCal guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Pipe fitter, plumber, good guy. I mean, I when I was doing the research on that book, we talked on the phone for 3 hours, just yucking it up over crazy stuff when he drove the Bailey Brothers, the injected Chevy Dragmaster car, and then when he switched over to the blown fuel Chevy that it was Broderick, Blessing, and Swansboro, and anybody else that had money could be a partner in this blown Chevy car. And in fact, he didn't know. I had to remind him who he replaced driver-wise in that car. I said, "You remember Danny Brown?" He goes, "Who?" I said, "That's the guy you replaced in that car." "Oh, really? I didn't know that." I said, "Okay." But Frank and I go back, and here's a little nostalgia tidbit here. Frank Bradley and the Bailey brothers were the first racers that ever bought photos from me. they liked the photos that I'd showed them of him driving the Dragmaster car, and they were the first guys to say, okay, send us some photos, and we'll send you some money. And those were the first guys that ever contributed to the Reyes I Want to Live fund.
You want to eat, right?
Pay rent, one of those things.
I mean, Frank Bradley, and for our viewers out there, everybody remembers Frank Bradley on the big, running the Big Show as a top fuel driver in the 70s and into the 80s. And you probably know the answer to this. Why was it Frank just ran out of money, or what? Why did he step away?
He went to work. I believe he went to work for Daryl Gwynn, help tune Gwynn's car. Yeah. It was just a lot of guys, they get to that point where, okay, you're spending X amount of dollars, but you're not getting back X amount of dollars. And it just wasn't feasible for him. For most of these guys that basically you see either kind of fade out or they go become a crew chief or whatever, they did it. They can say they did it. They won X amount of races. They had fun. They did this. They toured. Now it's time to spend somebody else's money, so to speak.
And if I remember right, with Frank Bradley, he didn't have big sponsorship on his car. It was usually just his name on the side of that car.
I believe he had one partner that I remember, a gentleman, his last name was Ramsey, I believe, but I'm not sure to the extent of that sponsorship, whether it was just I'll put my name on the side and we'll race for a season, or whether it was like, oh, here's a bunch of money, go racing. You never can tell with some of these sponsorships, even from, big corporations like, John Force and his Wendy's sponsorship, everybody eats for free. Okay, that's the extent. And Wendy's has this, billboard on the side of John Force's funny car, and his extent was everybody pulls into a Wendy's and his crew gets to, eat, double Whipples or whatever they have for free. So, and that's just, you don't know. And basically it's, it's always been a crapshoot for these guys sponsorship wise. Where you have a guy like Dennis Baca, who basically is the carpet guy, and he started his carpet service in Northern California, and at the time when Northern California, they're building all these big housing tracts, well, he got contracts to do all the carpeting in a lot of these houses and stuff, and he's an independently wealthy guy, and he went racing. Baca was serious, he's like that little Walnut Creek Mafia they had going up there. And I was very fortunate. Mike Citro, who built blowers and just an incredible tool and die guy that lived in that area. He knew all those guys, that little mafioso they had up there with Jim Davis, Don Cook, Dennis Baca, and Dwight Bale. He helped those guys build pieces and parts and things for blowers for their cars. So he got to know all those guys, and that knowledge he passed along to me when, we had conversations about NorCal racing. The Galley brothers were good friends of his. It was very insightful dealing with Mike, and Mike ran a top fuel car for one season and decided that a little too expensive to run one of those things on your own. But he was instrumental in helping Jim Davis when Davis put together these starters for top fuel dragsters. Yep. Okay, Jim Davis, he went to a airplane junkyard and found a starter that would fit, or he made fit. For the for a blower for a top fuel dragster, they could start them. They didn't have to push start them all the time. Well, Citro made the parts by hand that Davis designed, made the parts, and they perfected the starter system. And then Davis started selling those, and then he sold the whole deal to Charles and Albert, and they're the ones that perfected it even more. But that's where the starters come from that you see on today's fuel cars.
Yeah. And right here's the picture of a Jim Davis putting one on. Right there.
that's the first day he had one on on his car. And he had a, big old grin on his face because, it worked. And that was,
Yeah, and we, with our demographics here, most of the people know that there was a time when cars didn't have a starter put on them, and they were turned over. They were push started up and down the drag strip. You push start a car from the far end, bring it up, turn it around, stage the car, and go from there. I come across. We just did an interview 2 weeks ago. I just put it up with Wayne King, and for whatever reason, that interview, I mean, even Harry Hibbler jumped on my email and said that is one of the best interviews I've ever seen.
oh, Wayne's good people.
Oh, wow. Just some of the knowledge that came out of this guy, with Wayne King, I wasn't sure what I was going to get. And it was just floored me. The interview was outstanding.
Oh, he's a good guy. He let me cackle his car, his top fuel car.
He sent me that picture because he said, "Hey, we'll put you in the car." He said, "There's no way in hell I'm going to fit in your car. I'm 6'6", 310 pounds." And he says, "Hell, we shoved Reyes in there. So what the hell?"
Yeah, they stuffed me in that car. And I mean, it was uncomfortable, but it was cool. I mean, it's like, that's the first one of those cars I got to fire up and cackle, I should say. And then the other one was the late John Ewald's master car.
Oh yeah,
top wheel car. I got to cackle that one. I fit a little bit better in that car because they took the cowling off and kind of lowered me in with a crane or whatever. But that's quite an experience for me. It was like, I don't think I'd want to drive one of these things. No. But it was fun. I mean, it was a fun deal.
I had the chance to sit in an altered that actually had a big frame built on. It was built for a 300-pound guy, and I actually crawled in this thing. And I got to tell you, I felt the same way. I'm looking at this engine stuffed right in my face, and I'm thinking, you people are insane. How did you ever do this? I would have been terrified.
Well, I'll tell you what, no, I'll shoot the photos. You can go out and do whatever you need to do. I'll do the photos. No
well, it's what I told you when we did our interview, Steve. I get up close and personal with video with some of these running, fuel engines. When we did the whole Doc Holliday thing, I was a little afraid standing there.
Well, they back in the day, they'd hydraulic. They do, if the crew guy forgets to back the motor off, they did that at Lions. So they have the roller starters at Lions, and Bobby Hightower almost lost his arm one night. Whoever was crewing for James Warren, they forgot to back the engine. You back the engine out, get all the fuel out of the cylinders, and they forgot. They were in a hurry. They got to get up there because it was final round. And Bobby's helping him. He's holding the front wheel of the car, the two guys on the front wheel. They put the car on the rollers, and they hold it and they start the rollers up. Well, it blows the whole front of the motor out, and part of the block hits Hightower in the arm. And I think it was his left arm. It almost took his arm off right there. I mean, it was like standing next to a hand grenade when those things go off. And I'll tell you what, I saw an injected car and a fuel dragster do the same thing at Columbus one year. And there's a guy walking around with a part of the block sticking out of the top of his head. Oh. And they were, the ambulance guys are, hey, sit down. You got a problem there. And luckily it didn't kill the guy, but I have a photo of it, to be honest. But
wow.
I mean, I was like, kind of dumbfounded because it was an A-fuel dragster and they had just started it and nobody backed the motor off, nothing. They just a bunch of raw fuel in the cylinders.
Wow. Well, I do video. I'm not a photographer. I have no idea how to shoot photographs, but I'm getting pretty good at shooting video. And I'm sure that you, like me, in order to get that good shot, you got to do some stupid things occasionally. And I get done shooting a video and I'm like, why the hell did I just do that?
Yeah, I've had a few. There's a couple of photos in there that are like, why? Why did I do that? Why did I go stand in that place? And the one of Jim Davis at Fresno, I thought I was dead. I mean, he left the track under power. He must have been going 175, 180 miles an hour. He let one of his tires hooked and the other one kind of didn't, and it turned the car and he left the racing surface. Well, there's no guardrail at Fresno. So I was standing in the area that's kind of the no man's land with an 8-foot chain link fence at my back. I couldn't go anywhere. And he come by me, a couple feet away, bouncing up in the air and everything at 180 miles an hour. And he drove it back onto the track. I mean, it was insane. But the photo in the book there is like, after I got home and processed the film, it's like, why? Why was I standing there?
Yeah, it's all for the love of it, right? Arnold Berkey.
It's like I did same. I think it was the same race. Gary Cochran. I shot a photo of him. No big deal. I'm at 3/4 mark on the track, and he's hazing the tires, and it's a brand new car. And I look at the negative, and I put it in larger, and it's like, oh well, his front wheels are off the ground about this high. He has no steering, and I'm standing there like right next to the edge of the track. It's like, why am I here? It just it's just one of those insane things. You're like, I mean, you shouldn't footage. It's like you look at the footage afterwards, like, why in the heck was I standing there? Why was I laying down there? Why? And it's like, for the love of the one thing I kind of live by is I don't know whether you ever heard of this gentleman. He's one of the great 20th century photographers. His name was Alfred Einstein. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes, I've heard that name.
Okay. A quote from him is, right? This is a quote from him. Now, this guy had never shot a drag race, never shot Formula One. He was fashion, women, just incredible photographer, right? He says, when I have a camera in my hands, I have no fear. That's a quote, quoting him. And it's like, Alfie, man, you might have shot drag races or something sometime in your life to use that, that phrase. But yeah, no fear. Camera in your hands, no fear.
I come across a picture of Arnold Berkey, Bob Neal, the Berkey bunch.
Berkey bunch, sure.
NorCal guys, and there's a famous picture. I don't know who shot it, of the Berkey bunch exploding. It must have been in the 80s. May have been late 70s into the 80s, exploding, and Buster Couch is running for his life, and it's the biggest fireball I've ever seen.
Northwind, that was the Northwind car they had, that the back motor car that blew up on the starting line at Pomona.
Yeah.
I think that might have been Leslie Lovett. I think that might have been an NHRA photo. I know there was a few versions of it. Tom West shot a really nice image. Tim Marshall did, and I believe Les Lovett did. I was not at that race. I was off somewhere shooting motocross or whatever, assignment I had that particular weekend from Argus. But yeah, I saw the photo of that. It was that one, there's another gentleman that used to race. He had one like that on the starting line also.
Doug Herbert,
that's him. Yeah.
Blew that blower right up over the top of the stands.
Yeah.
Arnold Berkey, was he a pretty big presence in Northern California back in the 60s?
Well, they ran the junior fuel car. They were always in the mix as far as they ran the injected Chevy car with Bob the Worm Neal at the controls, and then they switched. I think it was in 68, 69 maybe. They switched to a blown front motor car. They ran a front motor top fuel car, and they did okay. I mean, it wasn't one of those guys, the team that was, people, were fearing or anything, but they'd come out, they'd win a couple rounds or whatever. And then they built the Northwind car, the back motor car, when everybody's building back motor. And I think after that one big explosion that you were referencing, I think that they kind of backed off as far as, because that was a very expensive explosion, and those guys were just working stiffs and did everything themselves. And a lot of times those explosions would put guys out of business, or they'd have to park for a while. And I know a couple of LA teams, they had similar mishaps, so to speak. And They either never came back or they said, hey, well, we're going to race maybe 2-3 times a year, whatever, a bigger race, Pomona or the World Finals or whatever, but we're not going to run. We can't afford to run every weekend because we just don't have the parts. And the main thing was maintaining the parts and the equipment, whether you're in NorCal or Southern California or, East Texas. I mean, it's all about the parts.
Here's another guy that I did not know was a NorCal guy, is Dwight Hughes. The Berry brothers. I didn't know that. I remember the name Dwight Hughes from 1974 U.S. Nationals. I believe he took on Marvin Graham, who eventually went on to win that race in 74. There's actually, I think ABC Sports covered that. It was actually video of that. So another NorCal guy, didn't know that.
Well, that Dwight's character, he's still around. He's still, he's a good guy. I mean, I would see him if I attended the Hot Rod reunions in Bakersfield. He's always running around there, and we talk and reminisce a little bit. And I always tried to get those guys some kind of publicity. I got them a cover on Drag Racing USA and color page here, color page there. I mean, they're just working guys. They're working stiffs, and when I think it was Don Berry went off on his own to do World of Outlaws. He ran the World of Outlaws with after they quit drag racing. He went out and hired a guy named Chuck Mueller, and they went out and ran the World of Outlaws for a while, because I have photos of them when I covered the World of Outlaws. So it was pretty cool that they kept they're just little guys, just I think they worked for the city of Fresno. The two Berry brothers did, and their original driver, Claude Stark, he worked for I think Sun Made Raisins, because it's the raisin capital of the world of Fresno. And they had a couple other guys drive for him. I think Denver Shoots drove for him, but Dwight was their main guy. He drove I believe he drove their A-Fuel Roadster. They ran an A-Fuel Roadster way back in '64, and that was a cool car. Very cool.
Well, I'm looking through here, some pictures. We got a lot of AFX funny car. I mean, it's just that it's just incredible. They got to actually right here, picture of Goody's Speed Shop. Talk about old school speed shop. How cool is that? Old Corvair sitting out in front of it.
Yeah, the guy standing in the doorway is Rich Guest. He's just standing there watching his employees goofing around on the streets out there.
You've got a picture in here you've actually got a picture of the Lou Arrington fire with Brutus at Lions. That's your picture, huh?
Yeah, mine.
That is I didn't know it was you that captured that. That is just brutal. I know people have seen that picture before, but how he survived that. I mean, good grief, that entire car is engulfed.
He, what happened was he pulled up to race Dickie Harrell. Okay. It was like Dickie Harrell, his first appearance on the West Coast in a couple of years or whatever. And, Arrington was Arrington. He had the Brutus. They'd seen the LA guys had seen Brutus, the photographer. Okay, well, so they all run over to photograph Dickie Harrell, but not me, because my guy Rich Guest always buys all my photos, right? And okay, I'm going to get a photo of Lou racing, Dickie Harrell. Well, the light turns green, so to speak, and Harold goes into like about an 8-foot wheel stand on the other side, right? I catch that out of the corner of my eye. And then Arrington moves about 3 feet and just, as you saw, just annihilates the transmission. And that's one shot. I shot one photo. And after all the mayhem, and Lou got out of the car and, checking to see how many holes he had in it, basically, but he was fine. He went over and thanked Larry Sutton, the starter at Lions, because Sutton had made Arrington wear gloves, because Arrington didn't wear gloves when he drove. So Arrington went over and borrowed a pair of the mittens that the fireproof mittens that Pat Minnick, the Chi-Town guys, were there, and Minnick let him use the mittens. And that was one of the reasons why Lou didn't have his hands burned up, was because of that. And that was the first thing Lou did, was he went and found Larry Sutton and thanked him profusely for making it, because Sutton, Arrington pulled up there to run, and Sutton says, no gloves, no run, period. And Larry Sutton, you didn't mess with Larry. I mean, he was the guy. He was the guy in charge. But that's a little one of those backstories that
Well, I can tell you right now. Hi, Larry. He's going to be watching this. When we did our interview with him, he actually told that story. So anybody that wants to hear the full blown story of that, go back and check out our Larry Sutton interview. It's pretty cool.
I mean, Larry was the guy. That was it at Lions on the starting line. And then when he worked at Irwindale afterwards, you didn't mess with Sutton. The guy was a racer. He drove top fuel. I mean, and he knew his stuff. And you just didn't. And most of the guys there respected him for that because he knew his stuff. He still does. So
here's Shirley Shahan. Now, I was just talking to my wife about this today. Paula Murphy, Shirley Shahan. There's a few names out there of women who really moved the sport forward before Shirley became a household name. And I never thought that any of these ladies got the credit they deserved for what they did. Shirley sort of, kind of took the whole spotlight away from anybody else who was racing. But tell me about Shirley Shahan. I mean, what an incredible lady.
Nice lady. I mean, she just one of these kind of people that, I mean, just so nice and just laid back. When she's out of the car, she turns into, the Tasmanian devil when she's in the car. I mean, that lady could drive. I mean, the Mopar and any of the Mopars that she had, and then, switched over to AMC. And I think what really caused her to quit was how AMC treated her. They go, hey, we're gonna, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna give you that, da 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 da, and basically, AMC stabbed her in the back, so to speak. And I think that was a bitter pill, and that's why Shirley said, "Fine, I'm a power company executive. I got my kids. I'm a softball player. I don't need this." So that was her deal. But boy, she could drive, and it's a shame that Mopar didn't come back and say, hey, we understand the AMC deal, da da da. But she could have been something else if she would have went into the funny car class, so to speak, or even to pro stock. Obviously, she was in pro stock with the AMC, but I never know.
I just, there's a lot of ladies that were on the scene that I've always thought that didn't get the credit. Now, I came across something in your book here, and I'm looking for it. Here it is. Harry Burkholder, who is a friend of the show here, he never told me this. I did not know that he crawled into a funny car for one season. We've got a picture of it right. Let me get it up here, right down here. It was called the Brotherhood. He teamed up with the Spiegel brothers?
Yeah, the Spiegel brothers. They ran a double A gas super or double B gas super, whatever weight they had that particular weekend. But it was unique. Their gasser was kind of unique. It was a sedan, Willys. No, it wasn't a coupe. And I think it was a 40 or 41 sedan. It was a really beautiful car, the blue and just really nice. And they were out of the Sacramento area. And of course, Harry and Pete were out of, and they thought that that the funny car deal was the pot of gold, and so they combined forces, and the Burkholders and the Spiegels decided that again, families, jobs, security, why basically jeopardize all that by, hey, let's go on tour, let's go to Chicago, let's go to New York, let's go to Florida, because they probably have seen a lot of racers that did forego their family or forego their job or whatever, and they're living in a cardboard box somewhere, in downtown Dallas or whatever, because they can't, and that was one of the problems with some of the touring guys. You get out there, you blow your car up, you crash it or whatever. It's like, what do I do now? Because I've already basically, burned that bridge to go back home or your family or whatever. But yeah, the Burkholders and the Spiegels just said, well, after that one season, they hung it up. And that was it. I like those guys. Harry and Pete were always good to me. I didn't know the Spiegels that well, but Harry and Pete were always nice to me. And I was, it was bad. It was bad when Pete passed away, but.
Well, and Harry continued on. They restored that car, and I've seen it cackle a few times. It's a beautiful piece of machinery. And, now they actually built a nostalgia version of it, which they're racing now in the nostalgia circuit. I think Ron Capps was scheduled to actually sit in the seat of that car and drive it. I don't know if that came to fruition or not, but I saw it make some passes. It's a pretty neat looking car, replica.
And you never did get to see Harry drive any of his cars, right? Any of the fuel altereds?
No, never got.
There's a reason that they spell his first name Hairy. That came about by NorCal columnist Henry Walther, who was a good friends of the Burkholders, and that's how he started spelling Harry's name in the columns when he would write columns about those guys. He would spell it Harry, like Harry, and boy, I'll tell you what, I saw him on a couple of runs. It's like, there ain't no way.
And you've said this a few times now. Get them out of the car. They're just laid back, great people, and Harry is that way. We met up with him out at the Nitro Revival last November and did an interview with him and his team member there, and laid back, nice guy. And I try to imagine him in the seat of a fuel altered, and I just can't imagine that.
Dale Emery was the same way. Dale the Snail. I mean, Dale was the same. A NorCal guy, and it's like, this guy drives a fuel alter. I mean, geez. I mean, Dale drove everything else. I mean, he drove, Top Fuel. He drove funny cars, fuel altered. Then he drove the wheel stander. So it's like, I'll tell you what, some of these guys, it's like night and day. They get in a car and it's just, like I said, Tasmanian devil time. It's just like,
well, I guess that's what it takes. So everybody, we're going to wrap this up with Steve. The book is called Northern California Drag Racing. It's an Arcadia publishing book put together by Steve Reyes. Steve, where can people get this book at?
Basically Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble also carries it. And then some of the, independent bookstores will probably carry it. And it was a fun project. It was something I had to give back to the NorCal racers. It basically kept me alive for, multitude of years. And I am negotiating right now to do a Southern California funny car book with Arcadia. So I got maybe another project coming. It just depends on how crazy these people are, if they actually want me to do another book. So, well, I appreciate your time. And if you like, NorCal guys, or if you like drag racing, I think you'd enjoy this book. It's a little history piece, and it put a smile on your face. I'm pretty sure if you're a real drag fan, I guess. And if not, it'll introduce you to a lot of really good people that I got to see race, and it was just a nice effort to put that book together. So,
well, the thing it did for me is it put a lot of puzzle pieces together, like Jim Davis, a lot of little pieces that I didn't know how they interconnected. Sure. It's just a great piece of history. And some of the names you don't know that were racing in NorCal, I mean, are in here in the pictures. As always, you're a legend, Steve. The pictures are just awesome. It just amazes me, the photography in this book. So
I appreciate it. It beat working for a living. So
I hear you.